I never thought it would happen to me. I always thought I was strong enough to handle anything that came my way. But when my mother was possessed by a dark entity, everything changed. It started out innocently enough. My mother had been acting strange for a few days, but I chalked it up to stress or maybe even a midlife crisis. But then things took a turn for the worse. She began speaking in a voice that was not her own, saying things that no mother should ever say to their child. I tried to ignore it at first, hoping that it was just a phase that would pass. But as the days went on, my mother's behavior became more and more erratic. She would scream and thrash about, her eyes filled with a darkness that chilled me to the bone. I knew then that something was terribly wrong. I sought help from priests and shamans, but nothing seemed to work. The entity that had taken hold of my mother was too powerful, too malevolent to be exorcised. As the days turned into weeks, I watched helplessly as my mother slipped further and further away from me. The once vibrant woman who had raised me with love and care was now a shell of her former self, consumed by the darkness that had taken hold of her. I fell into a deep depression, consumed by guilt and grief over what had happened to my mother. I blamed myself for not being able to save her, for not being strong enough to fight off the evil that had invaded our lives. But then, one night, as I sat by my mother's bedside, holding her hand and praying for her release, something miraculous happened. The darkness that had clouded her eyes began to recede, replaced by a light so bright and pure that it brought tears to my eyes. My mother smiled at me, her true self shining through once more. And in that moment, I knew that she was finally free from the possession that had plagued her for so long. I may never fully understand what happened to my mother, or why she was chosen to bear such a burden. But I do know one thing for certain: love is stronger than any darkness, and it has the power to conquer even the most malevolent of forces. And so, I will continue to hold on to that love, to cherish the moments I have with my mother, and to never take for granted the precious gift of family. For in the end, it is love that will always triumph over evil, and it is love that will guide us through even the darkest of times.